Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Thank you for the invitation to join with you. Thank you, Citizens Action. Thank you, Public Policy and Education Fund of New York. Thank you for Justice Works. Thank you for being one voice for Justice Works. Our individual voices, when brought to collective force as you do, can move mountains. And are there those mountains today to be moved? So thank you for all of the work that you do, for the energy that you put behind the punch for justice, and we won't stop until social and economic justice is there for each and every one of us that we call neighbor. So thank you so much for the good work. And I know that this conference has inspired a lot of thinking, a lot of solid thoughts. You are the progressive voice, you are the determined voice, and I encourage you to continue to dialogue within the communities and networkings that you call yours. Certainly the efforts that you've heard here this weekend, I'm told Dr. Perry spoke with you yesterday, is that correct? And I'm certain she hit the forces of racism head on and made certain that we have that responsibility to make certain that as you leave here inspired and motivated, you go out and challenge those who are thinking less than progressive. There's a lot of effort today, I think, to exclude and, disallow certain opportunities that we have all worked for and to roll back the wheel of progress. The wheels of progress that you stand for will continue to move forward aggressively, and I thank you for that. As you listen to the efforts in Washington, you get amazed at some of the thoughts that are shared publicly on the House floor. They would deny science, they would deny fact, they would deny all sorts of impacts that have been made, progress that has been struck because of forces like yours, and they want to, I think, roll us back into the dark ages where there was injustice, where there was pain, where there was hurt, where there was intolerance. And so I think it's important for all of us to build on each other's energy, and that synergy will provide the sort of force that will reach legislative channels like that of the House of Representatives. I think it's so important. The stakes are high, the forces are great, the negative forces are great, but there's nothing like the collective action of a progressive agenda that we have seen throughout the history of this great country. Think about it. We have been that battleground for justice here in the United States, which goes back to our very noble and bold and very humble history as a nation that has grown diverse with time, and it's designed to do so. When I hear some of the talk on the House floor, I'm thinking, you don't know the definition of America. The definition of America, in my opinion, in our opinion, I'm certain, is a quilt work, one that brings patch upon patch that gets connected one to another and provides for the beautiful threads of commonality that come together through forces of diversity, be it creed or ethnicity or race or gender or orientation. People will move forward as a nation because of our definition of difference, diversity brought together in one under the common banner of the United States of America. And so I stand here this morning proud as a grandson of immigrants to say to you that we need to continue to build our strength, which is our diversity, which is our opportunity for everyone to be welcome to these shores and to be able to build upon the greatness of America. We think of all of the work that had been done a century ago by so many ethnic groups that came here in search of new freedom, of opportunity, those who fought nobly for the battles of labor so that we could end a 60-hour work week, so that we could speak to the forces of the abuse of children in the labor force, where working conditions were improved, and where you would earn a salary that would support a family and allow for the remuneration of skill and talent and passion in the workforce to be humbly responded to in bold measure, and to know that we as a nation of immigrants have fostered this kind of change is a powerful statement. We think of 1909 when the first effort made by women in American history to provide for a strike, to speak to economic justice at the work site, was produced by the robust quality of some 20,000 apparel workers. What a great statement they made. And then shortly thereafter in 1911, we know the history of that wonderful, wonderful statement made by workers under very tragic situations with the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire that was impacting so many people that labor began to make a very strong force, a voice that spoke to the elements of 146 garment workers, most of whom were Italian and Jewish immigrant women who had been working under very difficult and unnecessary conditions. And that fire sparked within us an interest, an attention, a format of change that to this day continues to bear its impact and its influence. And we had the voices of those like Samuel Gompers and David Dubinsky and Emma Goldman, who, as strong, strong voices in the workforce, inspired people as leaders to make a difference, to say for certain, we as workers matter. We as workers are the power at that factory, at that mill, at that work site, and we are not going to stay silent. So when we rev up these voices, when we speak to progressive qualities, it is this empowerment that we bring to each and every person that walks the walk with us, that talks the talk with us. Think of it, in 1916, Margaret Sanger was very concerned about the impacts on women with the continual childbirth that many of those women bore. And she wanted to make certain that there again was an opportunity for information, an opportunity for women to better understand how they, as a force of our workforce, could be better responded to, where there could be justice brought to them. And so there are the humble foundings of the Birth Control League that today is known as Planned Parenthood, that has brought about a lot of opportunity for women by advancing progressive politics in the networking that we all know. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was able to join with a number of congresswomen in an idea that was given birth to by Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro of New Haven, Connecticut. And joining the speaker, former speaker, Nancy Pelosi, now the minority leader in the House, Louise Slaughter, another very strong progressive voice that comes to us from Rochester, New York. We're very proud of Louise Slaughter. Donna Edwards, who is an outstanding woman of color from the Maryland delegation in our House. I rode with a number of women on the bus. They called me their Frederick Douglass. But we traveled from Seneca Falls, where at that Wesleyan Chapel site in 1848, the first efforts to really speak to gender equality were made in very passionate measure, and where Susan B. Anthony and the forces of others, and a number of women who came together to speak to the efforts of women, were at that Wesleyan Chapel. And that was the first stop of that was the beginning stop of the tour of the Women on a Roll. And women coming together in our House, with many men joining them with the voices, are determined to make certain that there is a progressive agenda that speaks to issues like minimum wage, where 2/3 of that workforce happens to be women, where we speak to the efforts of reauthorization, extension of the unemployment insurance issue, where we speak to quality, affordable child care, which is an important element if we're going to enter the workforce, where women need that assurance, where families need that assurance, where that equal pay for equal work measure allows for women again to be given the opportunity to score equal wages for equal work that's done by men or women, making certain that fairness and justice and opportunity and equal pay opportunities are brought around by the voices of change. And so it was through that effort of the Bus on a Roll that, that women were going to make that statement that when women succeed, America succeeds. And that's what the bus message was all about. So picking up on that mantle of reform, picking up on that empowerment of the individual by using our voices individually and then wrapping it, putting a rapture of collective voices together, taking on the footsteps of leadership that were shared by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, that were shared by people like Susan B. Anthony. At that Wesleyan Chapel, they were inspired then to move forward, and the Women on a Roll, the bus for women to succeed, went from Seneca Falls through the upstate New York region with a stop in Albany, New York. Many of us were at that stop. They went then on into Massachusetts, into Ohio, and ended in Illinois, and we're going to renew that bus tour, I believe. But it is another way to empower voices and to bring people together in collective strategy. And the strategy is such that women took about 70 years to make that change for suffrage to be able to be realized, but it began with a single voice, collective voices at that chapel that then went out and walked the walk to make certain what is fair and just eventually happens. It took too long, but it started with a single voice, an idea that, hey, we're better than this. And the better than this became equal opportunity for women that began at that site. When we think of all the great work that's been done here in New York State as a donor area, a host community to progressive reform, to change in our society, we think of the efforts that were made by individuals of color like Frederick Douglass, like Harriet Tubman, with her efforts throughout the upstate New York region to lead an underground railroad. We're also reminded of the efforts of the National Association of Colored People, where the NAACP made its efforts, its roots here in New York, through the efforts of A. Philip Randolph, who built a great voice for the first black-led union in this country with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. That is richness of history. That is motivation. That is inspiration. That is providing for equal justice in the race measurement. So all of this continues to inspire us, the birthplace of the gay rights movement that began in Greenwich Village, when people who were impacted by police forces were finally given their moment to speak out back in 1969, when the effort was made that year in June, when people stood up, said, we're going to be heard, we're going to make a difference, and that gave birth to an opportunity for LGBT reform that provides for justice for people of sexual orientation that weren't heard before. Again, empowerment that comes to us when people are willing to speak. We know what the agenda is. We know that there's injustice out there. Gender's impacted by all sorts of foolishness in law that has not been retrofitted, has not been amended. We know that there's efforts out there today to disenfranchise voters. Look at what happened in some of the last elections. People standing for hours in line. A 96-year-old woman of color in Florida waiting forever to vote, but she voted. And she showed us that things were going to change. They cannot silence the voice of freedom and opportunity and progressive measure. They cannot silence it because it is accompanied by an immense amount of passion that makes a difference for all of us. Think of what Rosa Parks did from a bus. We talked about the bus for women on a roll. Look what Rosa Parks did. She changed the nation from a bus because she was not allowed to sit where she chose. So there have been these measures of constant reform. We are an opportunity nation. We have those opportunities. We need to work them. We look at the work that needs to be done for providing for worker rights that continue to be an issue out there. We look at the growing gap between management and labor. What used to be a recognized, supported sort of scale of 5 to 1, 6 to 1, now grows into 30 to 40 to 1. There is no justice. It's lopsided. We need to bring into the measures today a fairness for the workers where the remuneration for the work that you do is provided in a way that is shared wisely and reasonably so that it is not all going to management. There is an opportunity for us to strike for important reforms that come to immigration. And let me close on this note because it is so raw and so recent. We were supposed to close on Thursday for this recess, the August recess, where people go back to their districts for about a 5-week period and work the issues at home. We were delayed because the majority did not have votes for their own bill. They were rolling out a bill on the border issue, and they needed to buy some additional support from right-thinking, extreme-thinking elements within their majority. And you knew the product was going to get even worse as it was rolled out with enough people in the majority to pass it as a majority because they won't come to the Democrats. The leader of our caucus, Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker, now Minority Leader in the House, went to Speaker Boehner and said, we want to work with you. We want to come up with a reasonable strategy, an acceptable outcome that with compassion will allow us to address the border issue. Would not be done, would not be accepted as an offer because they needed to move to the right extreme. And so we get measures that make no sense. They don't allow dreamers to stay in this country. They would be threatened and not be allowed to stay here, as the DACA issue allowed them to. They want to deny that opportunity to the executive branch of this country. It's unacceptable. The tone that was established on the floor, the measures that were shared, the anecdotal evidence that they so-called claim they have, where children are escaping, they're weaving their way through the border patrols and somehow working around that effort, while in fact they're going to the agents at the border, identifying who they are and showing which families they may be connected to. When do we quit caring about our children? When do we quit caring about our children? And they're not illegal aliens, they're not illegal immigrants, they are refugees escaping torture. Children who won't sell drugs in their homeland can be put to death by gangs. Young girls are being raped and murdered. Children are in danger of losing their lives. And so they're escaping for the sake of opportunity in this country. Refugees, young children looking for an opportunity. And we're ready to respond by putting tarnish on the Statue of Liberty. Tarnish on the Statue of Liberty and denying, twisting the story, twisting the facts, not providing for reality to grip the discussions in the House of Representatives. Absolutely essential if we're going to have quality government. So we need immigration reform. A great number of Americans are calling for immigration reform. Our farming community needs immigration reform. Our high-tech community needs immigration reform. Our medical community needs immigration reform. We're asking for it in large measure, and we deny it. The leadership in our House won't let that measure to the floor. They won't let measures for minimum wages to be increased. They won't let that to the floor. They won't allow the equal pay for equal work to come to the floor. They won't allow for a reformed voter reform act to come to the floor. They won't allow us to fight the forces of disenfranchising voters in this country. We are better than this. We are better than this. We are a nation of opportunity. Let us express that boldly. You do it every time you come together as Justice Works. You do it individually in your neighborhoods. God bless you for the work you do. Keep up the voices. Keep up the change. Keep up the reform. Let's move forward with justice, social and economic justice, once and for all. Let's be the outstanding reform package that America needs. Let's move forward. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your great work.